Work needed on a property can be performed by others. You don't have to know how to do everything. You just have to know who to call.
You don't have to do it. You got to know how to get it done.
And that leads into the next thing here. I talk about knowing, you don't have to know how to do stuff, but here's the thing. You need to get some education before you get started. Now, you were talking about what to do when you're trying to get started, and I'm going to say get some education. A lot of people get caught up in the whole, I need to know everything before I take one step kind of thing. The paralysis of analysis. You got to understand that you just need to take a step. Once you take that step, then it puts you in different situations and around other people, and then you start learning the things you need to know to go further and further.
Good morning, and great morning, guys. Welcome to another fabulous episode of Exit Strategies radio show. Hey, you know who I am. I'm your host, Corwyn J, Melette, broker and owner of Exit Realty Low Country Group in beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, if this is your first time listening to this show, you, sir or ma'am, are in for a treat, because our mission here is very simple. That is to empower our community through financial literacy and real estate education, guys. Legacy building. That is what we do right on this show. Got to give a shout out to those who listen to us faithfully. I'm extremely humbled at all times when I hear someone say, hey, I tune in, I listen, the content has been great, etc. So again, I got to give a shout out. I got to give a shout out to Shanice, who fairly recently said, hey, I listen to you every Saturday morning. I'm like, what? You do what? So thank you so much, Shanice, and your family for tuning in. Our folks in Muddy Mullins, Marion County, that's how we get it out the mud. That's how we do. We build up from the ground up. I appreciate you and I love you. People out there in Moncks Corner, my mama live out there, y'all. Y'all know it all the way back, all the way over to the coast, to Hollywood, what you know, no good. Thank y'all so much for doing what y'all do. And got to give a shout out to some of my favorite people, Elder Pastor Evans, Senior. He's senior. If I don't put that senior on, that dude will jack me up. Now he will snatch me up. So thank you guys for tuning in. So guys, look, we got a good show today. So our guest today, we had with us previously some time ago, and they essentially cracked the door open. You know, salesperson or somebody, they come over, they used to sell this thing on TV that the person opened the door a little bit and the salesperson would stick their foot in the door so you couldn't close the door. Well, he cracked the door open. I ain't saying we trying to close it, but he got his foot in the door into what today I'm looking forward to is amazing conversation about overcoming some of those fears, some of those, if you will, objections, some of those things that hinder us. So we have with us an author. He wrote a book, guys, Build Real Estate Wealth by Joel Miller. So Joel is here with us today, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into some of those things that may be hindering and holding some of us, if you will, back. So Joel, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
Oh man, Corwyn, I've been looking forward to this. I'm doing great up here. I'm sure it's not as warm in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I'm at, as it is in beautiful South Carolina. So, but
look,
we'll have a nice warm conversation.
Look here, the soup kitchen is open now, because look here, it is high temperatures and humidity. I tell people it's like being in a crock pot. Imagine what your chicken, your beef, or your pork go through. That's what we do. So Joel, thank you for taking some time out to come back on with us. We had a great time last time you were on. For those who want to go back and look for that episode, that's episode 190. The title of it is Tenant Selection Secrets Every Real Estate Investor Must Know. So guys, please go back and take a look at that as we kind of continue this conversation today. So Joel, look, I want you to give our folks a recap, who you are, what you do. Let's hit them high and let's bring them on down to the ground.
Okay. Thanks, Corwyn. Well, I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania, halfway between Cleveland and Buffalo, north of Pittsburgh. I am here because I have I'm in my 48th year as a landlord, primarily residential landlord. And about 1991, got into flipping houses before flip was a real estate term. When they start saying it on TV, we just call it quick turn. Mm-hmm. And I flipped over 100 houses. And then about 2018, got into hard money lending, which has kind of moved into the main thing that I do at this point. I'm just real pleased to be a part of the equation. for other investors that are earlier on in their journey. I lend to investors just in our area here for flipping projects, or if they are buying and rehabbing, for example, a keeper rental property that they need to stabilize in order to get permanent financing on it from a bank. But I've been heavily involved with the professional organization of landlords in this part of the state since late 70s, early 80s when it was created. I eventually got on the board. I'm our second longest serving past president. I was 6 years president, and I'm still vice president because everybody keeps asking me to stay on as the vice president. And along that way, I started teaching our Landlord 101 class to not only beginning our investors, but investors that have been in a while that just want to brush up and hear class taught by somebody that's different from the last time they took it, for example. Then in COVID time, I started making notes about a possible book to write. And 4 years later, last fall, that book came out. It's become a bestseller already. It's called Build Real Estate Wealth, Enjoy the Journey of Rental Property Investment. And it's a little different for most of the books that you might find in that genre, which are normally like 200-300 pages long and talk about simply acquiring property and managing property and the math involved with rentals and all that. So this is 460 pages, Corwyn. It's a big book. In fact, we decided to own it. They said, "Hey, Joel, that's too big of a book for this thing." Well, I just couldn't take anything out, so we just owned it. We just write on the front, it says the big book on rental property investing. And it's really becoming the go-to resource for people that want to change their lives with rental property investing, which I believe your audience is trying to do in many cases. They might have landed on this whole real estate thing and they just need to know a little bit more about how to do it. Ron LeGrand, I think you probably know who that is. He's kind of the guru to the gurus, the real estate guru. And he reviewed the book, and Ron's older. I mean, he's like in his mid to late 70s now, but he reviewed the book. He says, "I wish I would have had his book when I was getting started." So we'll go with that. But it's a book. The reviewers say this. They say, it's not a book you just read and say, "Hey, that was great," put on your shelf and maybe never look at it. It's a book you read and you park on your desk. You're going to refer to it. This is your book to get for referrals. It's written for the established investor, but it's also written for people that are just getting started and want to change their life.
So, Joel, I'm going to jump in here because for our audience, guys, you can go to Amazon, you can Google the book and find it easily. And it does say right across the top, the header, but down there is the subtitle, if you will, is Enjoy the Journey of Rental Property Investment, which is huge. So I want to kind of take this as kind of the opportunity to introduce. So some of our listeners obviously are folks that invest, whether they do flips, whether they do buy and hold, they have maybe a small portfolio or even a larger portfolio of properties. But there's also a fair amount of people who are sitting here and saying, "I just want to get started and I am scared to death." So Joel, what is I'm going to frame it in the context of advice, but the reality sometimes it's not necessarily as much advice as much as it is encouragement. So what is your advice and or encouragement that you have for someone who is like sitting on go, like they have passed go, they got their $200, but then they stopped at the next square?
Let's take a short break.
You found the perfect property. You got the vision. Now you need the capital. At Melette Capital, we specialize in funding real estate deals for investors who want to build, flip, or hold and don't have the time to chase after banks. Whether it's new construction, a fix and flip, or long-term rental, we offer simple terms, fast approvals, and access to private capital. We even work with manufactured housing projects because we know what it takes to build value from the ground up. Simple. You bring the deal, we bring the money. Visit MeloFundCapital.com or call 843-619-7038 to get pre-qualified today. Melette Capital, we fund what you build.
Well, the biggest advice that I have, the overarching advice, no matter where you are in the country, is find your area real estate investors group, whoever is thinking to what you're trying to do, be it a landlording group, an investors group, or whatever. we have the Apartment Association of Northwestern PA. That was the organization I was telling you that I'm involved with. They are all over the country. And that is where you're going to be able to network with other people that have done or are trying to do the very same thing that you're doing or you want to start doing. And hopefully that organization is having meetings where you can network with these people and ask questions and get education, which leads me to the second part of that answer, and that is education. As you mentioned the word fear, afraid to start. What takes away fear? Knowledge, education. And that is part of the premise of the book. In fact, I kind of have a couple of points here just to answer your question. The premise of the book is that you can add real estate to your life, even though you might want to hold on to something that you have a passion for, like another career or a job you really love, but you know that maybe it's not going to provide you any retirement. So you got to do something about that. And you've figured out that rental property can not only provide you some income along the way, but also bolster your retirement. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, either or thing. I had another career as a professional mobile disc jockey. I think we talked about that the last time, which I pioneered the mobile DJ business in this part of the country. And I did that for 35 years, 5,051 appearances, and I retired from that in 2011. But my whole real estate rental thing was parallel to that all that time. And it kept going, after I retired from DJing, I continued to expand on the rental property stuff. But having said that, here's the further answer to your question. You need to clear your mind of overly negative and overly positive preconceptions about the rental property business. It's not all bad tenants and broken toilets, and it's not a get rich quick thing. You got to be in the middle and not having those two extremes of preconceptions. Education is how to bring you back to the center. So the other point I want to make is you can control the value and cash flow from rental properties to a much greater degree than with stocks or any investment bought on an exchange, because that's what a lot of people gravitate to when they have extra money. They are involved with some other job or something. They figure, well, it has to go into stocks. I just need to, that's what I have to do. But I don't know. You can't do anything yourself to affect the value of even one share of stock that you buy. The same way that you can affect the value of a piece of real estate that you own by making improvements, increasing rents, all sorts of things like that. Another point, rental income is residual and not related to you performing a specific task. They got to send you the rent every month, whether you're sick in bed or you're out doing something at the property. It doesn't matter. They still owe you the rent. And you say, well, hey, he just mentioned working on the property. Well, that's the next thing. Work needed on the property can be performed by others. You don't have to know how to do everything. You just have to know who to call.
You don't have to do it. You got to know how to get it done.
And that leads into the next thing here. I talk about knowing, you don't have to know how to do stuff, but here's the thing. You need to get some education before you get started. Now, you were talking about what to do when you're trying to get started, and I'm going to say get some education. A lot of people get caught up in the whole, I need to know everything before I take one step kind of thing. The paralysis of analysis. You got to understand that you just need to take a step. Once you take that step, then it puts you in different situations and around other people, and then you start learning the things you need to know to go further and further. So you don't need to know it all before you get started. And here's the thing, though. No matter how much education you get, it takes action to see results. And beyond action, it takes commitment. I mean, you can get a little education and take some action, but if you don't commit to following things through, well, then you're really not all that much further down the road. You have to commit and get it done. So those are the mindsets for somebody to take in whenever they're getting started, as you had asked about.
Thank you for that, by the way. And let me come back in, because sometimes I tell people, I hear things, at times. And when you were talking about being a DJ and how much you travel, in my head, I heard the Lil Wayne song, Go DJ, because you was everywhere, 5,000 and some odd gigs, man. That's a lot of DJing, man. So kudos to you for holding it down and keeping the party going. But, that whole fear and analysis paralysis, if you will, is very real. Now, you have a son, if I recall correctly, that got into, or essentially is following in your footsteps. And if you don't mind, give us an introduction, if you will, on his journey? Where is he at now currently in his process, reaching his goals?
He's doing great. When I mentioned that right around the time of COVID, I started making notes about the book, that was because he was in his early teens at that point. He's 19 right now. And it was becoming apparent that he did want to follow somehow, some way in this whole rental property thing. So, Corwyn, I got to tell you, I got inspired to write this book as though my son, and he's my only kid. My wife and I, she's a little younger than me, and we were married 6 or 7 years before we finally were lucky enough to get him to come along. I wrote it as though he was going to be the only person reading. If that was all that happened, that was going to be okay. So there's nothing in that book that I haven't done or that I wouldn't do if the opportunity arose. And I did not write it for somebody an audience that I would never meet, that was just faceless and who would never hold me accountable. The person who holds me accountable for what's in that book lives down the hall, and I have to get it right. So that's what's in that book. And he has started on his journey. He graduated from high school last year, 2024. He bought his first rental property about a week after high school, closed on it a few weeks later. It's 3 units, fully occupied, owner financing. Didn't even help him on that. And I'm happy to tell you that since you and I talked the last time, he closed on a second property a few weeks ago, 2 units, also fully occupied. This time he got a DSCR loan. It's a type of loan. And he's a college student. He got that loan. He doesn't even have any income. Those loans are based on the income from the property that you're getting the mortgage on. And of course, they want to see that he had some reserve cash and had some experience and so on. And he's also taken the Landlord 101 class with me and the guy that wrote the bonus chapter in my book, Real Estate, Steve Zumigale. We were the 2 teachers for that. He took that last month. And that, you talk about legacy wealth or having a legacy. That's my legacy, to him is the book. And then he's my legacy for my family. And that's, I think, what a lot of your viewers, listeners are wanting to create is some sort of legacy wealth. They don't want to just make a lot of money and spend it all and die broke. I mean, some people have that as a philosophy because you can't take it with you. But some people want to change the position that their family might have had in their lives for generations. They want to raise up. They want to have some generational wealth. And I can tell you that I don't know what you could say to me to tell me that investing in income property is not the best way to do that.
So you've referenced a couple of times, Joel, Real Estate 101 course. And when we think 101, we think fundamentals, we think basics, we think root of the matter. If you're going to do anything in advance, you got to start from the beginning. So this Real Estate 101 course, what does that look like? And I don't think you may mention, but is that an offering or something that's available to folks? A lot of people, look, we got to, as we joke from where I'm from, my hometown, we got to get out the mud. We got to get it from the bottom, but we're going to build it up. So is that how they have to figure it out? So tell us about that. What does that look like?
Well, we're lucky enough that one of the founding members of our organization back in the late 70s, who is still on our board as an emeritus board member, John Baldwin is his name. He's like about 5th generation of one of the largest developers in our area and in fact in the country. And even though that's the case with his family, and there's many people in his family now that are involved in that business, about 10 years ago, while he's still active on the board, he authored this Landlord 101 class is what it's called. It's actually proprietary just to our organization. We've never licensed it out, or it's not available anyplace other than if you're a member of our organization, you happen to take the class. But I'll come back to that. So to answer your question, the course is in 4 sections, and it takes you from after you've acquired property. It's not at all about acquiring property. It is how to deal with the property after you have it. It takes you through preparing a property for rent, advertising the property, managing the property, and managing the tenants. That property management and tenant management are actually 2 different things. They go hand in hand, but they're different skill sets. And then ultimately, the last part of it is where you are either renewing police or maybe evicting somebody. And it takes you through Pennsylvania eviction law, that sort of thing. So it's very specific to Pennsylvania with what's talked about in there. Now, having said that, that class is a part of the inspiration for my book. It is essentially the middle part of my book, because the book starts with mindset and takes you through even entity organization, and then finding, negotiating, and financing a deal. See, the Landlord 101 class doesn't do any of that stuff. Preparing the property to sell or rent, finding your tenants, the tax implications of owning and operating rental property, preparing financial statements for the bank, which is so key. I've spent so much time on that. I got all kinds of tricks in there. I wouldn't call them tricks, strategies that make you look good to the bank first time you see the banker. Because at some point, not everything's going to be owner finance for you. You or seller finance. You're going to have to go to the bank sometimes for properties as you get bigger. So it's got a lot in there about preparing financial statements. Then understanding, it goes into philosophical things like understanding the difference between riches and wealth, some good best practices for not only operating rental property, but actually your life and any kind of business that you're in. So what I want to say was, like, I'm trying to figure out a way to encourage the investor groups like I am referring to, that I'm a member of here, to use my book as a basis for them to create their own courses, like Landlord 101 courses, because it's all in there. It's more than just Landlord 101. You could go beyond that. Like, we have a 201 class. I teach part of that, where it's coming up in a few weeks. So that would be my encouragement, is to, as an individual, get my book. But if you're involved with any of these organizations, encourage them to consider using the book as a textbook for your own class, because that's the key, is getting the education so you don't get caught up in the paralysis of analysis, like flitting from here to there to that seminar. Oh, I just need one more boot camp and all that. And then I'm going to be taking a step and getting rich.
Exactly. So, Joe, let me ask you this one, and we're getting pretty close to our time for today, but let's talk about, we've really kind of hovered around that beginning, those things, just the initial step and getting people over the hump of fear. But when this thing is right, so when you get it right, you get in and starting to get my bearings, what strategies do you suggest that people employ to get them to one of the first milestones? Obviously, very first milestone is, hey, I just want to be making some cash flow. But one of those special milestones is when you get to that first $10,000 a month in net cash flow. So what strategies do you suggest, give, share, encourage people to pursue to help them to get to that magical number, getting from 0 to 10,000? Some people say 0 to 100, but no, we're trying to get 0 to 10,000. So give us that.
You're referring to the chapter in the book called $0 to $10,000 in net cash flow per month. I love it. Thanks for the lead in. That chapter starts with a guy making $40,000. It's like a fictitious investor. Okay. He's making $40,000 and he's a tenant. So one of the first best steps that you can take, first of all, you have to get your mind straight, that you're going to do this. You're going to commit, you're going to follow through, and you're going to discipline yourself to be able to continually put aside money that you're going to use for investment. Yeah, there's such things as no money down deals. I get that. But that takes some skill that you need to learn and some marketing to find those sort of deals. So hopefully you can get your foot in the door with some sort of a seller finance deal where you are able to put a low amount of money down and have a reasonable interest rate. Like right now, going interest rate for that sort of stuff is like 6%, maybe 5% down, and you're paying the sellers to bank. But to expand on that more specifically, I'm not talking about getting a single family home for you to live in or to rent out. I'm talking about getting a place that has anywhere from 2 to 4 units, but you are going to occupy one of those units. And since you're going to occupy it, though, you actually have the availability to get an FHA loan, which I think is 3.5% down, I think is the going thing right now. And you have to live, I think it's only a year in one of those units and still rent out the other 3. And then you can move on and do it again. You just can't have more than one FHA mortgage at a time. So, you would have to, let's say you moved in one unit of a 4 unit, you'd have to be there a year or so and then refinance that into some sort of a different type of mortgage. And now you can go get another FHA mortgage on a different place that you are also going to live in. So the seller finance things and the FHA type loans, and of course, I shouldn't leave out VA loans. Same idea. That could be 0% down, with your VA benefits. The point is to get into a place that you've got income coming from other people that live in the other units on the same property, so that you're almost there for nothing. There's enough rent coming in to cover your mortgage payment and maybe more. Certainly that would be the case if you had one. You're living in a 4 unit. I would hope that there's enough money coming in from the other 3 rents to pay almost everything for you, even your maintenance, taxes, and insurance, not to mention your mortgage. But you mentioned fear. I guess I'm here. Education removes fear. The lack of fear creates confidence. Confidence minimizes discouragement from setbacks. Not feeling discouraged means regrets are quickly forgotten. And sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So either way, you're further ahead having learned one more thing not to fear.
That's huge. That's huge. So, Joel, how can people get in contact with you? How can people reach you, get connected, get the book? Where can they get you at?
Well, you can find Joel Miller or Joel Miller Books on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram. But mostly I would direct you to the website that is created for the book, which is Joel Miller Books, plural, books, plural, joelmillerbooks.com. And on the homepage there, you can see, there's a button you can click on. You can see the entire detailed table of contents, so you know what we're covering there. Another button will show you some sample content, 2-3 paragraphs of the best stuff from each of the 16 chapters. And if you really want to contact me, you can also do that through the website. On the contact button, type in a message, hit send, comes through the same email that you and I communicate on. But of course, there's several buy buttons on there. And if you click on the buy button, it takes you right to the Amazon page where it's for sale. We don't sell the book from the website. You just can do that through Amazon or about 15 other platforms. It's an ebook or a paperback. And I would add one thing. Some people might say, oh man, I don't want to read no 460-page book. I wrote it for you. I did it with you in mind. Here's what I did. I put in a whole bunch of bold type words, sentences, paragraphs, and so on, so that if you did nothing besides skip from one bold type to all the way through the book, you get the whole idea. And if you found something, say, well, I need to know more about that, just stop and read all the work. So it's an easy read.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, Joel, I want to thank you again for coming on and giving us those nuggets today. I know that it encouraged someone. I'm going to be blunt and frank about it. Every time I get an opportunity to talk with someone, quote unquote, speaking my language, I pay attention to what they're saying. So with that being said, I literally have gleaned some new ideas from our conversation today. So I cannot wait to implement those and work to put that into play. So
did you use the joke I told you the last time we talked?
Give me the joke again. I don't think I did.
Hear about the landlord that was seeing a psychiatrist, a clinical psychologist, and a licensed counselor for a personality disorder. He had an apartment complex.
That's a good one. I love it. I love it. No, I haven't. I'll have to keep that. We have to re-air that for sure.
I got one more nugget for you.
Go ahead.
Don't take advice from anybody you wouldn't want to trade places with.
That's huge.
I know that some of your listeners right now are thinking, yeah, I want to do this. My family is going to put me down for trying. They're going to tell me I can't do it. Don't take advice from anybody you wouldn't want to trade places with. If you don't want to make an improvement for yourself, then just keep listening to the same old advice. But if you want to do something better and new for yourself, start listening to the people that have been where you want to go.
That's huge. Joel, I thank you for that. So thank you so much for being on with us today, Joel. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, man. Thank you for taking time out to be on the show and a part of the Exit Strategies Radio Show family. For our listeners, guys, look, y'all know, and I'm going to give it to you just as plain as I can, which is to tell you guys, that we have an opportunity here for greater, because greater is within us and greater is he who is us, who is a part of us. So guys, please make sure that you take this information today. Don't let it fall, as old folks would say, on deaf ears, that you take it, that you grab it, that you apply it, and most importantly, that you share it, because there's somebody else who can utilize this in what they endeavor to be and endeavor to do, so they can change the trajectory of their family and the outcome of their family for generations and generations yet to come. Guys, you know how I feel. You know how I say. I always put the two of those things together. And I give it to you this way, which is to tell you that I love you, and we're going to see you guys out there